Welcome to Fireside Chats, Leadership Journeys, brought to you by the Office of Academic Clinical Affairs and hosted by Dr. Carolyn Porta. These chats bring together University of Minnesota Health Sciences students with experts for candid conversation on leadership, career pathways, sources of joy, and strategies to rejuvenate.
Welcome to another edition of our Office of Academic Clinical Affairs Fireside Chat. I am Carolyn Porta. I'm an Associate Vice President and Professor of Nursing here at the University of Minnesota, and I'm delighted today to have three amazing scientists with us, Dr. Sara North, Dr. Kim Mansky, and Dr. Romina Nikoukar. They will each briefly introduce themselves, and then we will have the opportunity to hear them offer some reflections and some stories about their life and their life journey. The goals with these fireside chats are to certainly stimulate ideas and offer you a glimpse of a few pathways forward as you're thinking about your journey and your career in practice, in research, in policy development, or advocacy. I would love for any of you to put comments or questions in the chat, and I will certainly ask you to come off mic if you would like to. Let's start with Dr. North. Who's Dr. North?
Oh, who am I indeed? Wonderful to see all of you, to meet some new faces. I've been really looking forward to this session, and this intern group is really quite outstanding and has tremendously bright futures. So really excited to engage with all of you. I am an associate professor and co-director for our Center for Interprofessional Health. That's the primary identity that I bring with today. However, I do have many identities that I hold. I am a parent. I am a researcher, I am an educator, many identities, much like all of you. So I do think it's important to acknowledge those. Is that enough for an introduction?
Not sure that will ever be enough, but it's a great start. It's perfect. Thank you. Dr. Mansky.
Hi, well, like Dr. North, I'm really excited to be here, and you guys are an amazing group, so I'm honored to be asked to be part of this. I'm a professor in the School of Dentistry. I'm a researcher. I can just maybe briefly tell you that my lab studies the cells that chew up bone, so they're important, particularly in women's health. As we go through menopause and lose estrogen, these cells become more active, and that's why a lot of women experience postmenopausal osteoporosis. So it's kind of always been my interest to study science that affects women primarily. So that's, but I'm also a mom and a dog mom. I have two golden retrievers who, as my children have gotten older, they've become like my children. So, and I also mentor, I run the K to R program through CTSI. So these are junior faculty who have K grants who are trying to transition to R grants. And so I've really enjoyed that. I've done that the last few years, and I've really, really enjoyed getting to know. We have some outstanding junior faculty here at the University of Minnesota. So I've gotten to know them and enjoyed that. And then I also run a program for undergraduates who are interested in doing summer research in the dental school. So these are primarily individuals who are underrepresented in science. And so that's also been a really fun program for me to be involved in. So besides being a scientist, I do a lot of mentoring, and I really enjoy that. So that's kind of who I am.
Thank you. It's
Yeah.
wonderful. So many different directions I feel I could just take this conversation, and I will not sabotage it for the sake of the interns, but I'm going to need a personal consult on the bone hormone thing, Dr. Mansky. Okay. Dr. Nikoukar, who are you?
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and meeting all of you. Thank you very much for having me on this Fireside Chat. I am a researcher. I'm a senior scientist at Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory. I am an engineer by training. All my degrees are in electrical engineering, but I work in the field of space physics and specifically in heliophysics, which has to do with the studying interaction of the sun with the space near Earth space environment, all the way to the solar system and out of it into the very local interstellar medium. So it spans a wide range of disciplines, basically. So I do research trying to understanding the processes that happens in this wide region. And I work with and satellite measurements. I work with ground-based measurements, satellites like Voyager. Some of you might have heard about it. It's the most exciting project that I'm working on. Um, and I also work on space instrumentation and development of mission concepts, space mission concepts, so that we can study the space better. I'm also a mom of two boys, and which keep me very, very busy with day-to-day lives. And I'm also an immigrant, I should say. I come from Iran, and I came to the US for graduate school in 2001, and I've been here since. So I will be happy to share some insight in terms of the immigrant experience, especially in the light of everything that is happening right now. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. All right, I'm looking at the room. I'm trying to just read faces. Does anyone have an immediate curiosity that you'd love to just throw out to anybody? All right. I see some possibilities here. I just want to make sure, and I'll make space a couple times through the conversation. But first, okay, I'm going to go to first names. Romina, is it possible to time travel at some point in time? Is this a space thing that could ever happen?
Well, I'm not the right person to ask about that.
You're the closest. You're the closest adjacent person.
Yeah, I wish. I wish. I really want to go back.
Right? All right. Well, we'll leave that question unanswered for right now, but we'll all think about it. In terms of life and successes, it is really impossible to hear you all describe the things you do every day and the responsibilities you have and not ask the obvious question of how do you do it and what are some of your best tips for time management and for personal and professional boundaries, those who are early in the track, those who are about to get on a track of research or scholarship pursuits or clinical practice that can be 24/7. What are some of the strategies you've used to really protect your well-being? We know we cannot be curious when we are emotionally exhausted, when we are overwhelmed. We can't have that curious space that allows us to discover and to generate and to solve problems and to treat and care for others. So I'll open it up to any of you to offer some thoughts.
I would actually love to start this conversation because the point that I am at in my career is an interesting one where I was a student almost consecutively for decades, and I know that resonates with many of the individuals on this call. I pursued my bachelor's degree, kept going to school all through the summers to get a double major, went straight into my doctorate of physical therapy degree for 3 years, had a pause when I was in clinical practice, and that's when I, got married and bought a house and, did some life types of things. Then went back to school as I transitioned into academia, earned a master's in education degree, switched institutions, came to Minnesota, also earned a PhD within the last couple of years. I have promised my spouse that I am done now. I'm not sure I'm done, but I keep I'm like, this is the last one, I swear. So that's a lot of school. That's a lot of multitasking and juggling and giving up and trade-offs. And I'm at a point now where hypothetically, if I'm done, now what? And I love my work and I find joy. And so I'm at a very reflective place. And so I share that context to explain why I'm at a reflective place, and increasingly in various leadership roles. And one of the most helpful activities that if you have not done it to date, is truly physically, not on a computer, but with a pencil, drawing out your pie of where you are devoting your attention and your time and which buckets essentially are in your life. Which ones do you want to fill? There's multiple ways to depict. And a number of years ago, when I was in my PhD, was the first time I was really guided through that activity effectively. And I was doing essentially sized bubbles with my various identities. And the bigger the bubble, the bigger sort of it was in my life. And it is incredibly powerful to picture that and then to then transition it into sort of a pie shape. And what I learned through that exercise is my balance was okay. There were no slices that were empty. However, it was obviously quite clear, which ones could use a little bit of attention. But what I also really reflected on in that point is which items I had control over, which items I didn't, and then which items were sort of short term and which were not short term. So that confluence of all those different pieces gave me a really interesting sense of this PhD is taking a bunch of time, and I don't want it to be taking away from my family. However, it is short term, and if I power in quickly, I can change that balance that's in my control. And I felt okay with it. And so I shared that perspective partly to say we hear a lot say no, balance your priorities, take time for yourself. And those are wonderful, wonderful things, but you need to decide what it means for you. Me staying up incredibly late and writing and doing things after my kids went to bed meant I chose maybe not sleep, but I didn't cave in on my time with my kiddos. And that was a choice that I made. And maybe that wasn't the healthiest, but it's what I chose. And then it ended. I promise it ends and you get through it. So hopefully that's a helpful perspective. And again, if you haven't done a plotting, if you will, with size bubbles to where your attention's going, I really recommend that as a regular exercise.
Thanks, Sarah. Kim or Romina?
I can go next, Romina, if you want. I I guess in terms of time management, I'm a real list maker. So I make a list of both what I want to do that day, as well as I make a list for the week. And sometimes I even make a list for like a month. So in terms of if I have a really busy month, I have a lot of things to do. So I think again, I do it the old-fashioned way. I think Sarah was talking about pencil and paper. I still write things out, by hand. But I know my son does everything. There's a couple of apps you can use that allow you to do similar kinds of things, schedule your day kind of thing. So you can do it electronically too. You guys are probably more comfortable doing it that way, but I like doing that. Um, I also I think this is something you kind of need to decide. I'm a real morning person, so I try to schedule things that I feel like are more thought intensive. If I'm working on a paper or a grant, I'll try to do those things in the morning and then do things that are a little less, take a little less mental energy to do those more in the afternoon so that, I can try to be as productive as I can in the morning. Again, you guys are students, so that's not always an option that you have, but that's something you can think about. I try to set goals for myself for the day too. Like I really want to work an hour on this paper or something like that. Again, it doesn't always work out. Sometimes you get interrupted or you just get distracted with something else and it doesn't. But those are kind of some of my tricks for how I manage time. So, but I love Sarah's idea of I hadn't ever thought of that, how you slice up your life, your goals and stuff. That's really cool. I'll have to think about that and try that. So.
I like that idea as well, and it makes me think a loved one close to you could also do it for you, and I wonder how different they would look. Their perceptions of where we are putting our time and our attention and our energy.
Mhm.
I do want to briefly uplift something that Kim mentioned, which is this idea of the time of day. even if you're not a morning person. I don't know if anybody has read this book, Daniel Pink, When.
That's a
It
great.
is The Scientific Secrets of Perfect Timing. And I one of the parts that stuck with me is what Kim is describing, which if you are effective in your schedule, you actually will intentionally harness your biological clock to how you structure your day, which is exactly what she's describing. But there's a really cool sort of scientific explanation for how to do that and a justification for naps. So I just want to uplift what Kim said and encourage you to check out the book When, if you want the scientific backing even further and some exercises they give for how you can figure out, your timing. So apologies, Romina. Thank you for letting me answer.
No, it's a great book, and we will ask you all for book and podcast recommendations at the end of our hour. In that book, you also learn you should not be meeting with your boss at a time that doesn't work well for them. So know your audience and know what works best for them, and don't go in asking for that raise or for that X, Y, or Z knowing that they're at the end of their day of 12 meetings, right? So you can't always control that, but what is in your control, at least be thoughtful about it. It is a great read with some of those tips as well. Romina, how are you getting everything done?
I'm not. So I'm learning a lot actually, listening to this wonderful discussion. So this is something that I have struggled myself a lot. And I think, as the career progresses, it might become more severe if you don't manage it well. So it's important to develop the skills to understand how to do best time management. So I resonate a lot with what Sarah and Kim already said. Um, Setting up your day based on what your performance during the day. There are this wonderful book. I haven't read it yet, but I have listened to some podcasts, and there is a scientific reason why in the morning, for example, our brain is better wired to do scientific writing, for example. In the afternoon, it might be more efficient to work on brainstorming. We might work better that way. So I try to block my time off in the morning, for example, for things that require more focus on my side and writing. And things like that. And sometimes it works. But, during the day, as Kim said, things happen and, people stop by and ask for something. So you have to be mindful of that. But one thing that Sarah mentioned, and I think is very important, is to make priorities for yourself. This is something that I also found very effective for me, that we are only, human being with 24 hours a day and 7 days in a week. We cannot really do everything. So we have to prioritize our list of work, and then just, do it based on the whatever time we can. We have to accept that some of the things on the list might not get done just because we don't have time to do it. But the key is not to stress ourselves over it. This is what that I do, unfortunately. But I try really not to. That, I understand the limits, the physical limits of myself, and not try to bother me. I just, tell my colleagues that I'm sorry, I just didn't get time to do it. So I think it's okay to do that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Blair raised a question that is taking us in a direction I'd like to go. When we look at and talk about burnout, we can throw the term around, and we're not always clear what we mean and what we don't mean. So I'm going to offer a few thoughts about it and then frame a question that you can take in the direction you want. So the leading inventory for burnout, Maslach's inventory, has 3 subscales that are widely recognized. One is most predictive of poor outcomes than the other two, and that number one is emotional exhaustion. Emotional exhaustion. The second one is depersonalization, which links to what Dr. Prasad was talking about in terms of being valued. depersonalization is really that opposite of feeling that you're valued or your work is valued. And the third subscale has to do with achievement and sense of achievement. So as we think about those three characteristics of when you're not feeling achieving, or you're feeling you're getting stuck or going nowhere, when you're not feeling your work is valued, and when you are emotionally exhausted, all three are subscales or types of burnout, and you can have one more than the other. We obviously are wanting all of you to enter your careers, and even as students, to find that balanced space to protect your well-being and to avoid burnout. That doesn't mean you avoid all times of being overtired or cranky or irritable or all the things that go with that. But we are hoping to support you in a path that does protect your well-being and minimize your risk for burnout. When I look at all of our guests, I think a question would be just simply related to any of those characteristics of burnout. If you've experienced them, how have you mitigated the effects or sort of reversed yourself out of it? Um, and if you've never experienced burnout or any of those traits, how have you done that? What have you done to protect yourself? I think related to that as well, we might as well recognize some of the unique stressors or factors that can accompany people with different lived experiences and different characteristics as they're entering the particular fields of research or fields of healthcare. So I know, Romina, you mentioned having immigrant status. You're a woman in a pretty dominant men's field. There are a lot of ways in which we can have these pressures and these stressors that um, can put us at greater risk potentially for burnout. So this might be the space to reflect on any of those things, if any of you would like.
I can start if that's okay. Yeah, so burnout, that's my favorite topic. That is where I met Carolyn in National Academy's meeting on burnout. I convene a lot of sessions in our field, in our science field, on burnout, trying to understand, how we in the community, in the research community and academia, basically, why is that everyone seems exhausted and so tired, and what we can do in order to improve all that. I have done a lot of reading in order to understand what is it that it causes like that, and I have experienced it myself. I have to admit, especially during COVID time when we were very isolated, and we were just had to work individually, completely in our homes. We had Zoom meetings, but it never replaces just stopping by someone's office and have a small chat. So and being a woman, it also adds to the pressure. We always want say that, to show ourselves as a leader. Everyone expects us to be a leader. So we work, tirelessly in order to show that. I don't know what is the maybe our measures of success are not well defined in a way that you can say that, okay, I have achieved success now, so I can relax. You always want to get more. You are always asked to progress more, to publish more, and I just don't know when it is enough. But the thing is that at some point, I realized that my physical health is being is under attack. Actually, I would get um, some heart problem, for example, that I know it was because of the stress that I was under. So at that point, I said, I do my best, whatever I can, but if but I cannot do everything, and this is the limit that I have. And understanding that limit actually helps me a lot in order to let go of some of the opportunities. I mean, I have to do that. Otherwise, it would just be night and day. And as of now, actually, I say this, but I work in the evenings. I work in the weekends. Sometimes there are deadlines and I have to make it. But I try not to. I try to spend time with my family, with my kids, so that they have some memory of me when they grow up. But it I'm struggling, but I'm also making progress on that side.
Thank you so much.
I can say that I don't know if I was just I don't know. I'm not a healthcare worker, so maybe until COVID, I didn't feel like I really experienced burnout. But I think trying to help students manage the chaos and all the unexpectedness, and then with my own children, a couple of them were still in high school or early in their college career when COVID hit, and so I felt like that I took in a lot of their stress, trying to help them manage that and understand how we could how they could kind of try to keep progressing and moving on. And so I really felt emotionally spent. It was a time when I didn't like stop caring about people, but I did have to realize that there were times when I just had to say, I don't know, or, you know, I can't, I need a break for a little bit and then I'll come back and I'll try to, we'll try to work on this and help. It felt like I was taking in everybody's problems and um, trying to fix everybody and make everybody okay. And I think at the time there just wasn't always a way to do that. And I had to kind of acknowledge that I did have limitations and kind of what Romina was saying in terms of, I think as women, and maybe this isn't true, maybe, but I think we're always trying to justify ourselves and always trying to make everybody happy and please everybody and demonstrate why we should be there. And I think sometimes I think she's right. Sometimes we have to say, you know what? Today, this is the limit. I can't do any more today. And it's a very hard thing because I think we all feel like I don't like admitting that, right? I like being able to help and to move things along and to make everybody feel good. And yeah, sometimes it's really hard. So I think that's when I noticed um, burnout. So again, I'm not I don't take care of patients and things like that. So that was probably the closest I've ever experienced, probably what a lot of clinicians feel on a more regular basis. When they have patients that are struggling and things like that, and they're trying to help them. I'm sure that that's where, part of that comes from because they care a lot about these people and, trying to help them be better. And so I'm sure it can be very taxing. And so that's probably the closest I've ever felt to what that must be like, I think.
Mm. Well, in fact, carrying the burden of those you care about,
Mhm.
your own experience of secondary trauma or vicarious stress and trauma in a way.
Yeah.
And those are the labels we use for those who are doing direct patient care or taking on the burdens of others in very tangible ways. But we do it in similar ways in our personal life, and your example shows very clearly how we do. Thank you. Sarah, any thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I think one of the things that, a common visual representation of these areas is sort of three overlapping circles. And that type of visual, sort of a Venn diagram of these three contributing factors. And the way I've come to look at sort of burnout in general is the worst is going to be when you have all three. And I don't know if that's true. That's not a scientific statement. That's sort of how I have been looking at it. And I honestly feel like the choices we make, and like Romina was saying, the priorities that we balance, can potentially feed or harm the other buckets. And so, from the current socio-political climate, for example, I am most healthy when I engage less. It is not helpful for me to be digesting the news all the time. That's not productive. For some people, that gives them a sense of control, and that is helpful. That's not helpful for me. And so this idea of sort of depersonalizing or detaching actually helps me as a strategy, and it helps me keep better sort of emotional state. If I am working really hard and I'm emotionally exhausted, but I am really achieving quite a bit, that balances out for me because again, I can see that it is a choice. There's sort of a clear give and take. I think again, when things are not in our control and when there's multiple factors, that is the hardest to justify or to counterbalance. I have it's not regimented, but I really try to aim for a specific physical activity type of framework in my life. And the better I stick to that, the better I feel. That's something that is commonly noted in these types of circles. But one of those is a yoga practice. And so my benefit from yoga, sure, is physical, but it's also, I'm focused so hard that my mind can't wander. And that's really good for me in the type of yoga I do. Like, the leg over the shoulder and your arm balancing. I can't think about work while I'm trying to hold up my body. So finding those things that truly detach you, from the things that are swirling in your head, and then keeping those and, making space for those. I have found that to be helpful.
I feel like you've just made a pitch without intending to for our interns to consider jujitsu, because I think if someone's trying to strangle you, you really are going to be focusing on how to not let that happen. So if not yoga, then consider jujitsu, which I don't do yet. Lily, you've raised a great point in the comments with respect to system responsibility for our work well-being and our professional well-being. And I want to acknowledge certainly that while we are talking about individual decisions and boundaries, by no means do we in any way reduce the responsibility of the systems in which we work and live and play and exist. The research is really clear that system level interventions need to happen, and the interventions fall into three categories that have the strongest evidence for them right now: changing the work environment, changing the workflow, and changing or improving the work relationships. So the leaders that you work for are a primary reason for you to stay or leave a job. And to Sarah's point, if that leader is affirming your achievements and your accomplishments, that is a nice protective factor. The workflow, there are a lot of innovations happening in the research space and in the health care delivery space to make the work smoother, to make the tools work for you, not make more work for you, and to foster team and team communication and multidisciplinary collaboration. So that'd be an example of workflow. And then work environment can also that will factor in other dynamics of a physical workspace, but certainly a lot of us are in the virtual space as well. So many of the grants we've written for burnout most recently are targeting system level changes and are not telling employees to do jujitsu or do yoga or drink more water or take more breaks or take their power nap. We're kind of over telling people to solve the problem that the system also needs to solve. Yeah. Um, okay, I said that, and then I saw there was a comment. We're gonna wrap up pretty quickly. Okay, there was a reply. Kim or Romina, Sarah, do you have any comments or reflections there with respect to your work environment and anything that's kind of helped to keep you healthy or keep you at your job?
Yeah, definitely. System level interventions are necessary. It's not all on the individuals. And at my workplace, there are efforts. They understand the fact that we have to make some changes in order to make the environment more healthy for the scientists and engineers that we have. And yeah, it's a tough problem. But the group leaders, the team leaders, I think they can play a significant role into just by a simple way by recognizing the contribution from the fellow team members. That's the most important things. As Sarah said, if you are if if you feel like you have accomplished something, that will give you a sense of satisfaction. And I think that feeling of accomplishment, it can definitely come from your leaders and your supervisors.
Thank you. I'm wondering, Kim, about just taking this to a slightly different direction, but related would be as all of these interns, many of them are graduating very soon, would there be key questions for them to ask or to have answered as they interview for positions, key things to ask to tease out at all if that might be a good leader, supervisor, or the health of the environment? Are there things that come to mind?
I think what comes to mind immediately is probably work-life balance, right? So trying to understand how that person views, are you allowed to have work-life balance? I think we've all talked about, and I I do agree. We've talked about priorities, right? So sometimes you do sacrifice a little bit of family time to get things done. I think Sarah talked about that, how she would stay up late or maybe her own personal time to spend time with her kids. And I do agree that we all make choices, but I do think that there has to be some recognition from the organization um, that we all kind of take those responsibilities differently. And I think um, at different points in our life, we have different responsibilities that kind of pull at us, and that we need that maybe sometimes will take more time than it shifts the balance, kind of like what Sarah was saying too about the pie, right? So I think when my kids were younger, my evenings probably were a little bit more occupied with them than they are now. Like now I can, after we have dinner, I can work on a paper for a while and not feel guilty, right? Because they're the one, my one is home for spring break. He's off doing his own thing, right?
Yep.
He doesn't really want to be, spending as much time with me probably as I will with him. So I think there's some shift. So, but I think the organization allowing individuals to kind of set those limits. And so I think when you talk to people, the leaders of that organization, whatever it is, that they recognize that that you're going to have changing balances or changing pie slices, right? And so to use Sarah's example, and that's important because I do think that overall gives you well-being, gives you a sense of control, and I think in the long run will make you a happier person. And I think happier people work harder and they get things done, they're productive. So that would be, I think, my question to ask.
Yeah, that's great. And that leads into, I think the happiness point leads into a little bit of purpose and joy and where we find our purpose. And if we feel we're in that lane, if you will, that is a great buffer as well against some of those stressors and strains and external factors. Doesn't mean it's going to make everything smooth sailing, but it's a lot worse when you don't feel you're doing what you feel you are meant to be doing too in that year, in that semester, in that decade of life. So as we wrap up, I would love a comment from each guest about those things that bring you joy and passion. And I would love a couple of your recommended podcasts or books. We maintain a list of recommendations from guests, and our interns do go to those regularly, checking out new podcasts, checking out new books, and sometimes music. So if there's a particular music thing you enjoy, that'd be a great way to wrap us up as well. And as far as what brings you joy, it could be a little thing, a big thing, a personal thing, a professional thing. Just, letting the interns get to know the human side of each of you as well.
I will kick off, I suppose. Something that brings me joy that, again, a leadership coach not that long ago, a really great exercise for all of you to consider is something as seemingly simple as what is your purpose? Like literally on earth. What is your purpose? And she asked me this question and explained her own situation and how long it took her. And I said, "Oh, I know my purpose." And she said, "Right now?" I said, "Yes, I do." And I said, I really like to make things better. I like things to be better through my engagement with them than they were before. A later person helped me understand that I think I actually want to add value. That's really a little bit more accurate. So, where my joy really comes from, once I identified that, it's everywhere in my life. They talk about in Jenna, talk about your personality at home and your personality at work, but we're still the same person deep down. So, I had a big blank wall in my house that drove me nuts for years. And I just didn't know what I wanted. I stared at it. And one day I went, I know what I want to do. And I did a really cool art project on it. That brought me joy. When I'm at work and I see 15 different problems and nobody's being solution oriented, that brings me joy to try to make things better and to bring pieces together. So if you can, it's so trite to say, find your purpose. But if you truly kind of think about what is my purpose, many things then will bring you joy and you can label them actively as I know why that brought me joy. And there's a tremendous power in being able to do that. Um, the book that I would bring forward, I already brought forward When by Daniel H. Pink. I'm not sure if I said it out loud before. I visualized it, so I'll make sure it's on audio. Another one that I would suggest that's not necessarily new, but that really spoke to me is Give and Take by Adam Grant. And it's a fascinating, sort of enjoyable, story-based, real stories, almost case-based explanation of the people that tend to take from relationships, the people that tend to give in relationships, and what that looks like in leadership and in business and in practice, and when it's effective and when it's not. Fascinating book. Really enjoyed it. Honestly, my best podcast is the Myers Brothers Family Trips. I need to decompress when I'm listening to podcasts. So if you haven't listened to Seth Meyers and Josh Myers, Seth hosts Late Night, had been a writer on SNL, so it's all very humor based. And they bring on famous people who talk about their family trips. It is delightful. So I will leave you all with that.
That's wonderful. And thank you. We all appreciate a range of genres. Kim.
So I think I would agree with Sarah. I do find a lot of joy in helping and adding value, but I think maybe to go along with her yoga, I am not flexible at all, so there's no way yeah. But I do enjoy walking. I love to walk. There's some great dog parks, so I like to take the dogs to the park. It's a fun way to get outside and just I don't have to think. I can just kind of enjoy being outside and, the fresh air. So I think if nothing else, find a nice place to walk, a park or something, and just give yourself a few minutes outside in the sunshine. It's good. It makes vitamin D, so that's good too. Um, in terms of books, I do a lot of reading, scientific reading for my job. So I like to read what I call for pleasure, so fiction. I'm reading a book right now called Husbands. It's really it's an interesting premise. This girl comes home from like a bachelorette party, and down from her attic walks a man she doesn't know. He tells her that he's her husband. She kind of starts to put things together and realizes that her attic, if the man goes back up, a different man will come down. So she experiences all these different husbands. It's if you're not married, it may be, but it's kind of fun because she's like trying each one of them on. Anyway, she falls in love with one of them, and anyway, so it's just a fun book. So if you, I've enjoyed it. I've not quite finished it yet, but anyway, so
Mhm.
if that's something that you want to think about or whatever. Um, Podcasts, I kind of do the same. I do sometimes listen to a couple of ones for news, but I'm not going to tell you guys those because I don't think you need to do that. There is a great one from the National Academy of Science on mentoring. So I have used that. They're very short. If there's something that you'd like to think about, most of them come from the perspective of the mentee. So in fact, for the K to R group, we're going to talk about setting expectations and boundaries. So they're good, they're short, but they have, I think, useful tips and things for you to think about. And then I'm a huge basketball fan. I went to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, as an undergraduate. So they have a podcast on their sports. They bring in alumni from different sports teams and talk to them about what they're doing now. And I find it really interesting and fun, and it kind of brings me back to when I was an undergraduate. So again, it's totally not anything that but when I'm driving in the car, it's fun to listen and to think about. So anyway, so if there are any Tar Heels out there, there's a good podcast. So for that, it's called Inside Carolina. So anyway.
Well, thank you for that. And in the chat, you should put how far you think they're going, if any of them are in the men's or women's March Madness brackets. Romina, please, some final comments from you.
Yeah, so what brings me joy is actually trying to learn. I like my life to be challenging. I like challenges and I like addressing challenges, and I love to learn how to address them. One of the things that is recently, in the past couple of years, I have been really working on is trying to get along and understand my team members. So we are all technically, savvy, but when it comes to working with people, I mean, people are people, so they do not follow physics equations. So it's really hard sometimes. I have been particularly working on conflict resolutions, and which happen all the time. And whenever I can address it, and I can solve a conflict, between me and someone else or between two other people, that brings me a lot of joy. That I feel like I've accomplished something. I also like, on the personal side, I love to spend time with my kids. I love to paint with them. I like to play tennis with them. This is what we do when we all feel good about ourselves. And in terms of the books or podcast, there is a Harvard Business Review podcast, Women at Work, that talk specifically about challenges for women at workplace. I have found it very helpful for my own experiences at work. And also the book is called Friction Project by Bob Sutton, which is on organizational behavior and how, from the organizational standpoint, what are some of the principles that we can make, some things better at work, organization, and more efficient. And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. Let us know what you gained from this conversation by writing a quick review. Please share this podcast with others, subscribe for future conversations, and check out our other episodes. Explore health sciences at the University of Minnesota at health.umn.edu.